Let's try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church in person and online worship. Whether today is your first time here or you've been coming for years, we're so glad you are with us. My name is Clay Atkinson, and I'm a member of absolutely no committee. We are growing a community that transforms lives through the power of love. Our mission calls us to celebrate diversity, encourage spiritual growth, and promote social responsibility while we travel on and care for the earth. A special welcome to those of you at home who are joining us on Zoom today. If you're attending for the first time, please go to our website and fill out the welcome card so we can know more about you. A few announcements. I know some of you probably don't know there's a stewardship campaign going on. I will tell you that we're a little bit behind. We should be around 30% or so. We're at 25%, so the sooner you can get them in, super. Our stewardship campaign continues. Pledge forms have been mailed to everyone. Please mail them in or put them in the collective plate. If you haven't received a form, blank forms are available at the back of the church. Thank you for your support. So today would be a good day if you know what it is you want to pledge. In addition, in case you have not heard, we are having a church yard sale on Saturday, April 20th. Put that on your calendar, please. This is a wonderful way to spend some time with other church members and raise some money for the church. We have some church members signed up to sell their items, but we could use around 10 more participants. I don't know why not 20. We can go off into the street if necessary. In addition, if you have some things to sell but do not think it's enough for an entire table, please get in touch with Paulie Juneau or Emily O'Neill, and we might be able to work something out. Thank you so much from Emily. Now we invite you all to take the opportunity to silence your cell phones so that we can be fully present to one another. After the service, please grab a cup of coffee in the kitchen window and stay for conversation, or head down to the end of the long hallway to join groups in the brown bag brunch. Those on Zoom may stay on and connect with one another. And now let's center our hearts and minds with the ringing of the chimes.
Good morning, church. Good to see you on this rainy day. It's a good day to be inside, and I hope those of you who are home on Zoom are cozy, maybe cozier than we are. For those of you I haven't met before, my name is Reverend Tara. I use they and she pronouns. I am the minister here at Allen Avenue A2U Church, and it is my delight to serve this congregation and to serve with this congregation. Today we turn our attention to the theological grounding of our call to justice. We will explore the ways in which liberation theology speaks to us as Unitarian Universalists, diving into its history and context to glean wisdom for the long and winding and challenging road of building a better world, the road that we are called to travel. Shortly, our children and youth will join Emily and some members of our Social Justice Committee down the hall in RE for a session about communicating our values to the wider community. The focus will be a cross-generational collaboration on what new signage and visual styles we could implement that demonstrate this. How, they will ask. Can we show we are an inclusive and welcoming faith community of seekers who are actively living out our Unitarian Universalist values? So friends, you are invited to arrive here fully, to feel your feet on the ground or your back in the chair, to take a breath and signal to your body that we have entered a time set apart, a holy hour, made holy, made sacred by our gathering. Come into this place where we are a work in progress, where we learn together, grow together, and leave changed, where all are welcome, all are needed, and all are loved. Come and be welcome. You are joyfully called to worship.
As we light our sanctuary chalice this morning, those worshiping at home are invited to light a chalice or candle near you to connect us to one another. We gather this hour as a people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
And we light our community candle this morning, bearing witness to those in the global community across the world, as well as our own Portland neighbors who are living in poverty. We know it does not need to be this way. And as we bear witness, may we recommit ourselves not to turn away. Will you take a breath with me? Our opening hymn is number 105 in your gray hymnal, From Age to Age. Dale will play it through once, and then you are invited to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together. I have a wisdom tale to share with you today This version is called The Rich Man's Treasures, but you might recognize it, those of you who were raised in Christianity, as the parable of the talents. And a quick note about what a talent is. It's a biblical monetary unit that represents a certain weight of silver or gold. And 1 talent was worth over $1,000. Bear that in mind. There was a rich man who went away to another country. Before he left, he gave some of his treasures to his 3 servants. 5 talents to the first, 2 talents to the second, and 1 to the third. Look after it, he said. Trade with it, and give it back when I return. After he had gone, the first servant went straight to the marketplace. With his 5 talents, he bought and sold all kinds of goods. He worked hard until the 5 talents his master had given him had been multiplied to 10. The second also took his 2 talents to the marketplace and with hard work turned his 2 into 4. The third was afraid to do anything with the 1 talent he had been given. He dug a hole in the earth and buried it where no one could find it or touch it. After a time, the master returned and wanted to know what his servants had done with his money. The first showed him that he had turned 5 talents into 10. Well done, he said. You have shown that you can be faithful over a few things. I will set you over many things. Enter into the joy of your God. The second servant also came to him and showed his profit. And he said to him as well, you have shown that you can be fruitful over a few things. I will set you over many things too. Enter into this joy. The third came forward, clutching his 1 bag of talents, and said, Master, I was afraid to use your treasures. I thought that someone might steal them or cheat me out of them, so I hid them safely in the earth. And the rich man was angry. I gave you my treasures to use, not to hide, he said. Give that which I give you to the man who has 10. He will know what to do with it. For to those who have, more will be given, and they will have in abundance. Therein ends the story. And this is not meant to be a story about investing. I saw the wheels turning. Think about what else it could mean. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'll invite up Emily now, who will invite up our lamplighter.
In a few moments, some of us will leave the sanctuary to enjoy religious education programming, but first I invite our lamplighter, Emmett, to join me in the pulpit. A lamplighter is entrusted to transfer the light of the sanctuary chalice to the lamp and then go forth to RE spaces where they will light the chalices there. I invite those going to religious education to follow the lamplighter as we carry the flame, expanding our sacred space.
Would you join me in the spirit of prayer? Holy love, who we call by so many names, though know you are beyond all naming. We are hungry. We are eating our daily bread and bowing our heads, and yet we are hungry. We are thanking the farmer and the farm worker, and yet we are hungry. We are speaking in spaces for food that is healthy, and still we are hungry. We are tiring of slogans that say feed the children and mean feed the children leftovers. We are hungry for something that feeds more than bodies. We are hungry for help. Help us, O you who apportion the funds, fill in your hearts the child who you were, who would share with a friend, free and friendly. Lead us not into meanness, for we are the hungry. We want the loaves and the fishes, the water and the wine of sweet justice for all. Amen. Please join me in a responsive reading. It will come up on the screen, I think. If not, it's 588 in your gray hymnal. To loose the fetters of injustice. I will begin, yes, with the Rev Tara, and you will respond with congregation. Is not this the fast that I choose?
To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke.
It is not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house when you see them naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin.
Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly.
If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted,
You shall be like a watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail.
blessed be.
We are freely gathered, open, and welcoming faith community supported by your contributions. Each week, 1/3 of our offering is given away to a nonprofit organization whose mission aligns with our Unitarian Universalist values. This month's Share the Plate recipient is the Independent Seniors Network, a volunteer organization helping local seniors to maintain active, social, safe, and independent lives in their own homes. You can find more information in your order of service, or you might ask me or a few others here that are part of that program. Donations can be made now as a basket is passed through the donation button on your website, or if you're a member, on Breeze. If giving through Breeze, please note if the donation is your pledge or a gift to our Share the Plate. If you are visiting us for the first time this morning, please know that your presence is your gift to us. At this time, our offering will be collected and gratefully received.
A reading by Gustavo Gutierrez from The Power of the Poor in History. If I define my neighbor as the one I must go out and look for on the highways and byways, in the factories and slums, on the farms and in the mines, then my world changes. This is what is happening with the option for the poor. For in the gospel, it is the poor person who is the neighbor par excellence. But the poor person does not exist as an inescapable fact of destiny. Their existence is not politically neutral, and it is not ethically innocent. The poor are a byproduct of the system in which we live and for which we are responsible. They are marginalized by our social and cultural world. They are the oppressed, exploited proletariat, robbed of the fruit of their labor and despoiled of their humanity. Hence, the poverty of the poor is not a call to generous relief action, but a demand that we go and build a different social order. Therein ends the reading.
Circle round.
To liberate is to give life, to build a different social order. And we talk a lot here in worship and in the work we do together as a congregation about building a different social order, about using our hands and voices and dollars in service of the greater good, in service of creating heaven on earth here in this life. And it can be hard to talk about why, other than the response, because it's the right thing to do. It can be hard to talk about the theological grounding for this call to action, about what it is that calls us to the work of justice. And it is my belief that continuing to articulate the why will not only deepen our commitment to our Unitarian Universalist values, but will also help us to clarify our own theological convictions, which can act as a guide when decisions are hard, when despair creeps in, and when we struggle to agitate for change when the conditions of our own lives are quite comfortable. One of the theological perspectives that has inspired my own Unitarian Universalist theology of justice is the liberation theology that emerged out of Latin America, the Catholic Church in Latin America, actually, in the late 1950s to 1980s. Rev Tara, why are you talking about Catholic theology from Latin America, you might ask? Well, I hope you would. I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked this question. You know me. One of the reasons why is that it's interesting and inspiring. And the more we can reflect on the why of our work, our way of being in the world, the more strength I think we have in sustaining it. The other reason is that we have been asked to. We have been asked to. My colleague, Darcy Lane, has explained this well, and I quote her. She writes, "In 2017, our denomination was called to accountability by Unitarian Universalists of color to root out the structures of oppression inside our own organizations. We UUs have been working on this a long time, but it seems that whatever we were doing was like pruning the weeds back in a garden instead of getting to the root of the problem. So we convened a national group called the Commission on Institutional Change to help us get at the root of the matter. Their report was published in 2020. Many of you have read it. One of the recommendations that surprised me most, she says, was the need for us to focus on liberating theologies. That all UUs need to know in a deep, grounded way that working to end oppression arises directly from the root of what we believe and who we are. The recommendation of the report reads, "We need to articulate a theology of liberation, experimentation, and innovation grounded in our UU values and sources of inspiration. To develop a shared theology that centers on helping to unearth, manifest, and point the way toward liberation, along with experimentation that strives for our collective flourishing." That strives for our collective flourishing. Out of deep reflection on the material and social reality of crushing poverty, domination by those with political and social power, and interpersonal and structural violence in Latin America, liberation theology was born. A movement in theological thought and faith-based justice work rooted in the particular context of the late 1950s to 80s in the Latin American Catholic Church, liberation theology named poverty as systemic violence and named justice for the poor as not just a moral and ethical issue, but a spiritual issue. God, they argued, was to be found on the margins of society. Those who have been shut out from power and privilege, they say, know more about what it means to be in relationship with the divine than anyone else. So to be in relationship with the divine, that which is most sacred, is only possible by working in community and true solidarity with people on the margins. Latin American bishops and priests began to push the Catholic Church to side with the poor in this way. And this was extremely controversial, for naming that the issue of systemic injustice and the concerns of the poor, the most marginalized in society, were the concerns of the church itself, meant that the church could not turn away from those concerns, could not continue with business as usual. For an institution with power, this is inconvenient. The gospel, the good news that the people of Latin America needed, was a gospel of radical liberation. They wanted to be part of a church of service and justice, not a church of power. Two of these thinkers were particularly influential. The first, Oscar Romero, Archbishop of San Salvador, who was vocal in critiquing the violent civil conflict and injustices in El Salvador and preached in favor of human rights, at the time radical. Romero was assassinated while officiating Mass in March of 1980, shot directly in the heart while preaching about service to the poor. His image is on the cover of your order of service. The second, Gustavo Gutierrez, Peruvian philosopher and Dominican priest, known as one of the founders of liberation theology, although he says, I'm not the founder, the people are. He is the author of this morning's reading. Romero, Gutierrez, and their contemporaries wrestled with the question of salvation, ultimately articulating that human liberation here and now is more relevant than salvation in another life. Working for liberation is, in fact, how we save one another. And they called their faith communities to make real and to embody, to enflesh, not just intellectualize the concepts of poor, of solidarity, of margins. Interestingly enough, the United States was not a friend to liberation theology. Olivia Singer writes that Ronald Reagan's foreign policy framed it as a, quote, weapon against private property and productive capitalism, end quote. Continues naming its ongoing impact. The legacy of Latin American liberation theology is nevertheless rich. In its wake emerged iterations of Jewish liberation theology, Palestinian liberation theology, Islamic liberation theology, Muharista and feminist theology, Black liberation theology, Minjung theology in Korea, and Dalit theology in India. Liberation theology even reached Fidel Castro in officially atheist Cuba. Powerful stuff. Theology is the critical reflection on what we do, rooted in the values of our faith. The lives that we live are the starting point for our theologies. In the words of Gutierrez, this is a theology which does not stop with reflecting on the world, but rather tries to be part of the process through which the world is transformed. And so here we are, Unitarian Universalists, not Catholics, in Maine, with a wide range of theological perspectives, understandings of faith. We are from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and we have different levels of involvement in justice work and in service. Unitarian Universalism is considered a liberal religious tradition, defined by liberal theology scholar Garion Dorian as a religious perspective based on reason and experience, not external authority. And this is an important part of who we are: reason, ethics, direct experience, critical themes in many of our theological understandings here in this congregation, and they should be. But, I do wonder about the kind of solidarity that liberation theology invites us into. I wonder about what it might look like to move from a liberal theology to a more liberative one. We are called to move from reflecting on what we believe to reflecting on what that requires of us, and then doing it. We are called to move from reflecting on what we believe to reflecting on what that requires of us, and then doing it. This is a theology, Gutierrez writes, that does not stop with reflecting on the world, but rather tries to be a part of the process through which the world is transformed. Our Unitarian Universalist theologies must be accountable to the most marginalized among us. And we live into theological accountability by building relationships of solidarity and true community with people on the margins. We don't speak or work for or on behalf of them, but we create space for their leadership and follow their lead, offering resources and support as we can. We reflect on the ways in which some of us in this room hold marginalized identities and work to see ourselves as interconnected and in solidarity with one another's struggles. We live into theological accountability by shifting beyond a model of service and moving to a commitment to power analysis and true justice, that dance between giving and empowering. We need to articulate a theology of liberation, experimentation, and innovation grounded in our UU values and sources of inspiration, to develop a shared theology that centers on helping to unearth, manifest, and point the way toward liberation, along with experimentation that strives for our collective flourishing. Solidarity and the preferential option for the poor, working to bring about heaven on earth here and now, pours out of what we believe and who we are. It pours out of us. If only we look at it, if we listen to it, and then do it. And so this morning, I want to leave you with the words of Gustavo Gutierrez himself. He writes, "Universal love is that which, in solidarity with the oppressed, seeks also to liberate the oppressors from their own power, from their ambition, from their selfishness. But this cannot be achieved except by resolutely opting for the oppressed. That is, by combating the oppressive class. We will have an authentic theology of liberation only when the oppressed themselves can freely raise their voice and express themselves directly and creatively in society and in the heart of the people of God, where they themselves account for the hope which they bear when they are the protagonists of their own liberation. May we help to make it so. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning requires a little bit of explaining, but it's going to be fun. We're going to sing number 1030 in the Teal hymnal, Sia Hamba, which is a South African liberation song. But we will sing the first verse as the Spanish, and then we will sing, don't worry, it's not too hard, and then we will sing, we are marching in the light of God, and then we will sing, we are singing in the light of God, and then we will end with the verse in Spanish, Caminamos en la luz de Dios. You'll figure it out. We'll have a good time. Dale will play it through once, and then we will rise in body or in spirit and give it a go. Good job. Perfect. Friends, and now, even as you step out into the empire, be not of this structure, but be the light that liberates, the salt that savors, the hand that heals, the water that washes, until all have access to this grand and beautiful creation. Our worship has ended, and our service begins. Go in peace.